Okay, so I think our announcements are over. So now we have like the main attraction. We have Christen McLemore. We're excited to have you, my friend. Thank you for joining us. She's going to discuss what's next for a Scrum Master, which I think is such a cool topic. And I see that there's interest here, and this is really great. But so Christen, I don't do bios anymore, so you share the information you want to share. I do have a quick question for you. So during the presentation, how would you like folks to ask questions?
Real time, because guess what? There are no slides.
Okay. Sounds good.
So that was actually going to be one of my very first questions is raise your hand either visually or with the raise your hand reactions if you love PowerPoint and slide decks.
Wow, that
really
was
no one
response.
Oh. Oh no, Grant and Maru, they love it. Are you sure? I'm not so sure.
I love everything.
Guys, have you used Prezi? Prezi rocks.
I actually did use it mainly because I had seen it in other conferences, and then it got so saturated with everybody presenting with it that I'd stopped.
Yeah.
But I understand what you mean. The reason why I chose, well, I will be completely transparent, which I always am. The reason why I did not want to do a PowerPoint presentation is one, I didn't have time. And two, I didn't think that this was a kind of topic that should be that stale, sterile, and non-interactive. If anything, I'd rather have more discussion in this conversation rather than me telling you what to do as next in your role. Yeah. So I actually have, as true to form as a former Scrum Master, stickies for everything that I would like to cover. So I thought I would first start with, well, who the hell am I to even give advice or give you suggestions about what to do next after being a Scrum Master. So I'm going to give you the 60-second rundown of all the companies that I've worked with. Worked at as an I started out at Burger King. Any other fast food people out there? Somebody's probably, a lot of people don't want to work at fast food anymore, but worked for Burger King. Then I went to college. Ended up getting a job after I got married at United Airlines as a reservations agent. Then I got a job at Airline Tariff Publishing Company in Northern Virginia, where I was living at the time. And they are the people that put all of the rules and regulations as part of your airfare. So when you used to go to Expedia or all those systems and you look at the all capital letter description of how the change ticket prices were going up and down and how many days you could change your ticket, that was me. I was typing it in, got carpal tunnel. Not really a pleasant thing, but that's what they gave me. Left there, went to AOL, worked at AOL for about 15 years on and off. Got laid off there 4 times. The 4th time I was like tapping out, going somewhere else. You guys obviously don't appreciate me. So I went to a consulting firm in Northern Virginia, DC area, and did about less than a year as a / project manager at Department of Education. Very quickly realized that the government work is not for me. So I went back to AOL, and then I ended up going to Fannie Mae after one of the layoffs, and then went to Rally Software because at AOL, I had hired Rally Software here in Boulder at the time to come out and help me do Agile at AOL, which is where I learned what Agile was. Got my certification through them and their instructors with Scrum Alliance or is that Agile? I always get those two mixed up, Scrum Alliance, I think. Got my Scrum Master certification, ended up getting CSP, which at the time I was the 42nd person to get certified as a CSP. And it was a proctored exam, so that was crazy because it was the first time I ever had to do something like that. Then Rally was bought by CA Technologies. Then I was laid off, started my own business for about 2.5 years, which I still run. And now I work as an Agile practitioner / enterprise coach at Red Hat. So that's where I'm at today. So all of that to say, it doesn't matter where you've been. You can go anywhere with your career. I sound like a Schoolhouse Rock. Just imagine that I'm on my roller skates, you know? Remember that one video that they did where like, they're trying to figure out what you want to do when you grow up. And so they asked the girl, what do you love to do? And she's like, I love to roller skate and I love people. And the cartoon Schoolhouse Rock said, you should be a roller skating waitress. And she was like skating around. And I thought that was the best Schoolhouse Rock episode because it spoke to tying in what you love and what you're good at with getting paid. And that was the shift for me, is to finally find a place where it felt natural, it felt good, it felt like I was making a difference, and I could get paid too. So when you can find both of those things in one job, then that's where I think a lot of the euphemisms and slang terms and mottos come. Well, you won't work a day in your life if you love your job. And that was what I was looking for. And I'll say that I didn't find it until I went to Rally. And that was in 2013. Now I'm going to dive into the Scrum Master side of things. Now, how many of you started your very first job, and I'll say real jobs, not the, lifeguard at the community pool job or the Burger King flipping fries like me, but the like real full-time job? Was your first job a Scrum Master? Does anybody start their career as a Scrum Master? No one? Yeah. So we kind of evolved into that. But I will say this, there are a lot of folks now who are graduating from high school and college that they do actually start jobs as Scrum Masters. So they don't have some of that historical, maybe project management or developer background before moving into it. So there's a lot of ways that all of us currently got to where we're at. And there are a lot of ways that future generations are going to get to this path of agility. So be thinking about that, because other people are going to have questions for you. How did you get this job? Like, what did you do to get here? And then what are you wanting to do next? So if you will, use the chat if you are not able to use the microphone, and Nancy and Marie, I think, will help me with this. But the question to all of you is, what do you want to do next? So whatever you are right now, what do you want to do next? So you definitely unmute yourself if you would rather say it out loud. Retire. I'm with you.
Yeah, I like
Oh,
that.
no, I'll talk.
I retire.
Hey guys. So this is
I want to be the
Amanda.
roller skating waitress. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I break every bone in my body. But I'll talk because I have some exciting news. I know quite a few of the faces on the camera here. I've been in Agile Denver for a while, and been a Scrum Master for quite a while. And I have just stepped into a program manager role. So instead of managing one or two teams or one small project with 5 or 6 teams, I am now managing a program with 58 teams. So just exciting stuff.
Yeah.
And it's taking me to that level of strategy and up here in the clouds where I like to stay. And so it's just wonderful to see my skills being applied to a new set of work, and working at the strategy level is really exciting for me to take a change and do something different and exciting. So I'm really happy about it. And
And I'm seeing other folks. Go ahead.
Sorry, I will make a plug that, in this time of COVID and all the crazy going on, I know a lot of my friends have been laid off. I work for healthcare. I work for a very large healthcare organization, and we're literally hiring 88 more people in my department alone. So if you're looking or know someone that is looking, please tell them to go out and look at the Vizient careers page and see if there's anything that can help them.
Thank you. If you don't mind just putting that stuff in the chat, like the information.
Yeah,
So
will do.
Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I'm going to read some of the other ones. So RTE, Enterprise Agile Coach, live on a Greek island, Project Manager, Scrum Master, Public Speaker, Agile Coach, something more valuable. I'm good where I'm at. Well, that's always nice too. And I think I covered most. Grow into the role of Enterprise Agile Strategist. There we go. So everyone sort of already has in their mind what they'd like to do. Now, how many of you, and this is more a rhetorical question, how many of you know exactly what you need to do to get there?
I do.
You already have a class. Yeah. So some do, some don't. So that's what we're going to talk about in this session, is what are all the different ways in which you can get from where you're at to somewhere next. And I'd say that not 100% of the case. I've probably been to all of those places already. And I had to try to do trial and error to figure out which one was the right spot for me. So if I go back to my list of companies, right? Reservations agent at United, then ATP, I was doing basically what's called a rules analyst, but it was a lot of data entry, not a whole lot of thought, but I learned a lot more about computers. Then when I got the job at AOL, I literally, this was sort of 1999 when I started working there. I didn't even know what America Online was, but it happened to be that my roommate slash landlord, I was paying the rent check, and he was dating someone who worked there and had an AOL account, and he was messaging, and I knew her because we both volunteered at the same rescue squad in Virginia. And that was my first introduction to true technology. And I said, oh, that's so cool. I want to go work there. She got me an interview. I ended up working there for almost 15 years. And I went from everything from a business analyst to a systems analyst to a project manager to a program director to an enterprise agile coach, or I don't even remember what my title was at the time, which I'll go into titles versus roles here in a second. But ended up traveling around the world, going to different AOL offices, teaching, training, coaching, and learning about agility, so that more people across the company could learn how to apply it internally. Now, I'm going to be the first to admit, I probably knew less than most of the people I was teaching, but I recognized that early on and started every conversation with, I passed a test. And now I'm here to share with you what I think it means, but I want to ask all of you in this room, if you've done this already, I'm going to go sit down and you're going to come up here and share with us and me what you've been doing, because this is part of the whole learning exercise, is sharing the information. That's what meetups have become, is I learned this, hey, do you want to know about it, and share it. And that's really how I moved within my career from one role to the next. Now, a lot of people will say they would prefer to be a full-time employee. I get that. I've gone back and forth. I did full-time, I did consulting with a full-time job. Then I started my own business doing consulting, and now I'm back to full-time. And I'll probably share a little bit about why I did that. But when you look at all the different paths that you can take, most people that I've talked to have not become a Scrum Master yet, but they've gotten maybe the class, maybe they haven't actually passed the exam yet, or they didn't take the certification course, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I get a job? I mean, everybody's asking for experience, and I can't even get my experience because I can't get hired to do that. So a lot of folks that I've worked with, we've tried to figure out how you can volunteer, how you can offer to help even within your own company, find out who the Scrum Masters are, go sit in and observe, go work with them and say, I can take on a couple hours a week, to help you with something. Or do you go to meetups that maybe I could join so I can make connections and find out that Amanda has some jobs at Vizient that maybe I could get in the door there? Or maybe they're doing internships where if I'm that age that I don't necessarily need to work full time and I can actually go in and intern. Some internships pay, some don't. So those are ways to get your foot in the door. Let's move into the folks who are also already employed. They're already a Scrum Master, but now what do I want to do next? Now, there's a lot of opinions about the title or the role or the use of the term Agile Coach and how that's different from Scrum Master. And I've said this in a lot of different contexts, but I don't really care so much about what you call yourself. I mean, if you want to say rainbows as senior analyst kittens, I think that's fine. But what you do and what value you bring and how much you love your job will show through, and people will ask for you to come back as the senior kittens, unicorn, fairy, whatever, because they value what you do. But it is helpful to understand that right now there's an HR dilemma with how they hire and the job families. And a lot of companies are still in, I wouldn't really call it waterfall, but they're still in the old way of categorizing people with salary bands and titles. And a lot of companies have said, you're going to get a project management title and a job family and a job band with a salary band, but your role in the company is a Scrum Master or a practitioner or whatever they kind of give you as a name to explain what you do here. So that is a challenge I think is probably going to continue to happen. But that's also something to keep in mind whenever you're looking for jobs that are posted on websites or those careers and monster.coms, is that they're still likely going to be on there as a project management role. And you'll have to filter through the job description to find agility terminology to see if they actually have that. The other thing to look for too is that the hiring manager is usually who you really want to ask, not the recruiter, because the recruiter, whether they're internal or external, doesn't necessarily know what the job actually is going to be. So if there's a way that during the interview process, you can talk directly to the hiring manager, and I would also recommend talking to the people on their team so that you can get a better idea of what it's like to work for that guy or that woman, excuse me, or what it's like to be working with that group of people. Because you do, at least I do, want to know that when I'm walking into a new job, that one, I'm going to love working for that person, and two, that I'm going to have really healthy conversations with the people that I consider my peers to help me grow, and I can help them grow. So I want to make sure that we mesh well from an interpersonal perspective. Now, that's the FTE side. There's also a route that you could take, which is to be a consultant. Now, you could be a consultant and you'd work for a company that basically subs you out to their clients, like an Icon Services or a C Prime or Accenture. And to some extent, Scaled Agile does this, but not formally. They have a network of partners that they work with that you could potentially get onto a gig with them. You could also start your own business. But I also have a hesitation with that, because what I've seen is a lot of folks, especially around the COVID times, if they got laid off, they tried to kick off their own business and do consulting, and they don't realize how much marketing time it takes and networking time it takes to actually get roles when you're just one person. A lot of the bigger companies have onboarding requirements for new companies, and you have to come in under a different name. So it becomes a little bit more difficult for people to make that work if it's the first time they've ever started a business. So if you want to go the full-time route, we kind of talked about that. If you want to go the consulting route, then you also probably want to think about, do I want to be someone who goes to a client and works 40 hours a week for them, but I get paid by this other company that actually has the contract? That's kind of a nice way to get enough experience that eventually you could run your own business, because you're building up a network of people who have worked with you at different companies over a span of time that gives you that network to then get more work later. So building your brand, building your name recognition, and referrals. A lot of folks that I know, when they used to work with Riley or they were a subcontractor of ours on some accounts, what they would do is have more than one client. So there are gigs where we will write a contract and it's a 40-hour-a-week thing, but we also have a lot of work that is not. Because when we go out and propose to some certain companies, because of what they want to do within agility, they may not need someone there 5 days a week. Maybe they can't even afford it, but they need someone that'll come in maybe 3 or 4 hours a day, or maybe 10 hours a week, or 20 hours a month. It depends on how they write the contract. That allows you as a consultant to also feather in other clients, either through the same vendor or potentially your own business on the side. So I myself, I kind of did a little bit of that, where I was a sub to one company, but it was only 40 hours a month. So that's like less than full time, or excuse me, that's less than part-time even. So then I found other clients that I was able to fill the rest of my schedule out because of my network, having done more work with that other company. Definitely use LinkedIn for that kind of thing, even as a full-time employee for both. Ask for recommendations. I know that not all generations are using LinkedIn, but I guarantee you that is one of the main pages that a lot of recruiters and hiring managers are going to go to, because they want to see who is recommending you and what are they saying about you, who are they connected with that I might be able to go ask. Like I get an application for employment from Nancy. I'm going to go look her up on LinkedIn and find out, do I know anyone who knows her? And then I'll call them up and say, hey, Nancy applied for such and such position. How well do you know her? Do you recommend her for the role that this is what I'm looking for, that kind of thing. People will do that. So be prepared for it and use it to your advantage. Because if you do put a lot of effort into the LinkedIn stuff, at least once a month, to kind of keep it updated with it, at least if you've changed jobs or you've asked for recommendations, that can be very helpful, not only to you in building the brand, but also to them to get that as sort of a normal practice to help each other out. I have also,
and Christen, there's
Yeah.
a benefit also is if you talk to somebody and they refer you, they might get money for it. So
yes, that's right.
It's
right.
their benefit. So
Yeah.
network.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So let's talk about the consulting thing, because I've coached some folks who are kind of new to the full-time employee thing, and they're trying to figure out, do I want to start my own business? Do I want to do consulting rather than be an FTE? And they were trying to figure out, and this is really a personal choice. And it comes from a financial perspective, a bandwidth perspective, like how much time do you want to invest in what it will take to do those things, and also your skill set. So I had the advantage of working at CA and Rally, where I was actually writing contracts and working with sales. So I had a really good foundational knowledge of what it would be to have to write a master services agreement and to write a contract and to work with the contracting company of the company I was submitting the proposal to. So I had that knowledge already, but a lot of the people that I coach don't have that experience. So I've been helping them like find templates and create documents for them to start building that as part of their business. But I also tell people that is going to take months for you to not only build all those documents for you to be able to send them out, but you're going to get rejections, and you're also not going to make connections that you can even get a proposal in front of someone. So unless you have an existing foundation of people who know you, who will also refer you to other people who are looking for that work, I would actually recommend, if you want to move away from full-time employment and move towards consulting, start out with a partnership, either with an existing company that does that kind of thing. Like Agile 42 is one that's local. Agile Velocity is one. I think there's a leadership, Agile Leadership, I think is another company, and they're fairly small. They do smaller contracts. They're more boutique sized, and you'll get a lot of help as part of your role as a consultant. So let me talk a little bit about the life of a consultant too, because that might be something that would be interesting to understand the difference. So as a full-time employee, you have work hours. You log in, especially, and I'm going to talk specifically COVID times because we're all working from home for the most part. You log in, you make sure you're available, you take your phone calls, you've got all your meetings, you're doing everything that you would normally do in person. Now you're figuring out how to do that online. The difference is when you start consulting versus having a full-time, you're either going to have someone who does that work for you to get you in the door, and now you are subcontracted to go be a Scrum Master for, say, an Aetna or a Cigna or a Travelers or a USAA or a Ford or somebody like that. And then you will need to be at a state of your skill set that you don't need anybody to hold your hand when you have that very first phone call to get started. So if you're not in that mental or skill set mindset yet in your career that you don't need support, that might not be the best place to go next yet. So get to the point where you've got a whole ton of templates and documents and tools in your toolbox that, as long as you have some time to ask questions and find out where are you at, what do you need, who are the people I need to talk to, and I already kind of have a game plan in my head about what I'd likely do for you once we get started. Or maybe I don't want to start with a template, I'd rather talk and find out what do you need, and then I'll build what it is. If you're not able to do that independently, probably don't want to do consulting just yet. If you do a small consulting firm, sometimes you'll be paired with someone else. So for example, whenever I used to send people out to a new client, I would usually pair an Agile coach or a Scrum Master either with me or with someone else who is more of an enterprise level transformational type of consultant or advisor. And then they were almost like their mentor while they were on the account. So they had someone that they could ask questions to every day. There were other accounts though that either because the company doesn't have the funding to they only have enough funding for one person, and they needed to do some high level planning work as well as some team level, then we need someone who had that breadth of experience that can handle the RTE role and coaching them how to implement SAFe if that's what they're doing, as well as spend some time with the Scrum Master and teach them some basics that maybe they didn't get because they've only taken the class and then passed the exam, but they don't have any practical knowledge, but they will be the Scrum Master for that team. So if you can bounce around to all those different parts of the organization and give your wisdom here, give your wisdom here, and then move on, you're going to have a lot easier of a time transitioning from that kind of a role to running your own business and being your own boss and having your own accounts, because you kind of understand every aspect of the business that an Agilist would need to incorporate themselves into to make it successful for the client and to subsequently make you someone that people are going to say, oh man, that Nancy lady, you have got to talk to her because she was amazing. She took care of us so well and it was so easy to work with. And that's how you start to build your business. But you really need to have that foundational independence of all the different things it'll take in order to be a successful consultant on your own first, so that doesn't super stress you out. I had the luxury and the benefit of having 2 senior VPs and a senior director who were my mentors at CA and Rally, who helped me with building transformational plans for a company from start to finish. And I also had them mentoring me on how do you manage the business of revenue and basically running a P&L for the area. So I was running the Rocky Mountain region for CA for all of practice services for those accounts. And I held USAA, Ford, a bunch of really big names. And it wasn't until I'd been doing it for about 6 months that I kind of went, oh my God, I'm actually doing it. It's actually working. Like all of that coaching and helping I had, now I don't have to think about it. Like it's becoming second nature. It's becoming easy. And I'm the one who actually has the answers for new people that are joining the team. And it's, you know, that feeling when you finally get there, it's like one day you turn around and you're like, who just said that really amazing thing? Oh my God, it was me. I like, you finally figured it out. You're like, all the synapses are finally firing. And then of course a gray hair comes out and you feel like you're going backwards, but you work through it, right? So I think I kind of burned through quite a bit really fast, but I want to pause for a minute and ask, what kind of questions do you all have about the full-time roles of, you know, like one of the things I think I skipped over was, what do you do after Scrum Master? Some people will go to RTE if they're doing safe, or they'll do Agile Coach, which to me is different, but it's all in the way you explain it and how you're operating. So Scrum Master to me is you are isolating those skill sets for a single team. Like you may be able to coach more than one team, but you're really focused on Scrum, the roles of Scrum, the ceremonies of Scrum, the artifacts of Scrum, and it's very specific to Scrum because that's why it's called Scrum Master, right? I'm the master of Scrum. So that's sort of that small component. When you become an Agile coach, in my definition, it's because I've learned more than one framework. And I've also practiced and coached them. And if people have questions about how to apply larger agility concepts that are not specifically isolated to Scrum or Kanban or Safe or Nexus or Less or DAD or whatever, that I would be able to have a conversation with people who are curious about that and help them understand. Now, I may not be an expert to the 10th degree on every single one. I have enough I can guide people to where they might want to pursue more. Then you talk about enterprise level coach. I think of that as being more transformational. So you're not spending time day to day with a Scrum team. You're not spending time day to day with a train if you're doing safe. Instead, you're actually helping them figure out, how do I implement all of that across a very large hundreds of people organization and build a plan that they can start executing on to become agile, whatever that means, and solve problems that they're experiencing, that they think that the magic wand of Agile will magically just start fixing all of those things. And you're like, no, not really, but let me try. So with that, let me stop. So what questions do you have? What are maybe some personal journeys that you're on that you want to have a dialogue with all of us and share where you're at?
So hi, this is Sue. I'm from Boston, and I have been in Agile for 9+ years, but I had to take a break for my son. And I gave the certification, 2 certifications, the Certified Scrum Master and the PSM. So the question is, you were suggesting to get into a volunteer work as a Scrum Master. And I'm doing that, but I'm just not, yeah. So luckily I got a project manager, Scrum Master kind of a thing, but I just want to know how much. So it's can I add it as experience, or should I add it as a?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
As a volunteer or okay.
Yeah. And here's how you can help that benefit you. One, so this is for everybody else too. If you want to start volunteering and add some sort of value to whatever that charity is or whatever, and apply some of these agility skills, first set it up that way in the very beginning and say, what is the time frame that I will be helping you? And these are the things so start laying out almost like a transformational plan for that charity, so that then they can understand and you can learn and apply that same method of consulting, right? Because it's a consulting service in a way by volunteering and offering your skill set. The other thing is to talk at some point, and I would probably do it at the beginning, depending on your comfort level with them, I would love to have a recommendation from your company after we've worked together for a while, so that you can tell others what kind of experience you've had, because that's going to build your LinkedIn resume, your physical resume, your CV, and it builds your network, because if they are online with other people who see their recommendations they're giving to you, it will also create some bridges. The other thing too is, I was actually just talking to someone a couple of weeks ago. They actually got their PhD and they took a CSM course, passed it, and they were trying to become a Scrum Master. And I jokingly said, "You're a PhD, why do you want to be a Scrum Master?" And I wasn't saying it as a negative way, but I just, like, for some reason in my head, I'm like, that's so far apart, which is not fair. And I realized that. But she said, "I just love the culture behind it. And I want that to be part of my core. And I'm already volunteering my skills, but I'm wondering if they might hire me full time." And I said, "Well, wonder no more, go ask, my friend. They might say yes, because if you've already been volunteering with them and then they have roles that become available, they might even design a role for you and come up with the money, because now you've proven your worth with them."
Yeah, so I think that's laying down a plan. I'm doing it as I go, but if I
Yeah.
put it upfront, I think that will be helpful. Absolutely. And now, one like a teeny tiny, should I put my experience in the volunteering section or as an experience on LinkedIn?
Well, I think that's a personal preference. For me, if I'm not getting paid, I put it under volunteer.
Okay, that's what, and I'm putting NGO so that it makes it.
Yeah.
So Christen, I would basically say change that. Because again, if I'm looking at it, the first thing you're going to see on LinkedIn is jobs. Whether you get paid for the job, that's nobody's business, right?
Okay.
If you're volunteering it, you're doing the job, do the job, right? You're owning the job, and whether you're not getting paid or not, you're doing the job. So I would put it in actual work, right? Nobody needs to know whether you got paid or not. Right?
It's just, that's why I said it's really a personal preference on how you want to handle it on your own.
Yeah, because they were just, and this is just LinkedIn because it goes at the bottom. And usually volunteer work goes at the bottom of your resume. So you really want to bring it up to the more relevant, prominent stuff. But that's just my take.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's hard. It really is. When I started.
Okay, thank you guys. Yeah.
Cool. What other career paths are people on that they have questions about? Is anybody thinking about becoming a consultant, or they're curious about what companies they could consult with?
Hi, my name
Karuna.
is Karuna.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, there was such a big pause, so I just didn't know if it was my internet. So I have done SPC, I've done RTE, I have done a couple of like Agile coaching, the ATF, done my CSM, PSM, PSPO, 1 and 2, as far as the Scrum Alliance. I've gone through the Safe Agile aspect of certifications. It's just that I have been working as a Scrum Master for about 3 years. I know that I want to take the next step, but every time I try to send my resume out and forward that out, I am not getting a step above beyond as far as being that Scrum Master. How do I make sure that I am in that state to showcase that I have the knowledge, but not the experience? So how do I get into that mode of getting involved, or getting into that mode of, I don't know.
Yeah, get the job. That's what you want. Well, it's tough because as a hiring manager and a peer interviewer, I know from our side what we're looking for. So maybe that will be helpful if I share a little bit of that too. So when we look at resumes, or when I've been looking at resumes, I actually look past the certifications and I'm looking for the experience. And that also depends on the role I'm trying to fill. Because one of the things I've coached a lot of people managers on is you cannot continue to pursue only candidates that have extremely senior experience, only pay them a junior salary. And that is a problem for a lot of companies where they're not congruent with what they're asking for. The money is not to get a senior person. There's also the aspect of you want to have a mix of expertise within your team. You want senior people, you want middle level people, and you want junior folks, because each of them will grow at a different pace. And eventually the boss is going to want to get promoted or move to a different place. And who's going to backfill that? If you're not creating a team that can grow along and fill in spaces where there is needs for those roles. So we have to do a better job as hiring managers to consider how we're looking at resumes and how we're filling our teams. That's definitely two things. The other part is from the resume part. I'm always looking for people who have gone not only to get their cert, and maybe they didn't have the title of what I'm really looking for, but I can see, and when I talk to them, that they've actually been working in those roles even without the title. So one of the examples is my own. I was a project manager for several years doing traditional PMP, had my PMP certification and so forth, but I wanted to do Scrum Master stuff, but the company was not interested in doing it fully yet. So at lunch, I held a come learn about what Scrum is session in conference room, blah, 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 on the first Monday of every month. And I'll teach you everything I know. And it was a way to not only get experience in teaching, but also to help me kind of create what my training material would be, because we didn't have any. And it actually led, and it was totally unknown to me. We had a senior VP that left Microsoft and came to work for AOL. And somehow they heard that I was teaching Scrum classes on my own, and it wasn't my job, over lunch. I ended up getting a full-time enterprise. My title was the Agile Evangelist at AOL because of that. So I ended up getting a job because people just heard about what I was doing, and it wasn't my full role. So I guess what I'm saying is look for some opportunities to either pair with other people who are already doing the job you would love to have and say, I want to help. I want to learn from you. Can I partner with you? Can I sit with you? Can I observe? And then eventually, kind of feel out where that person is as well as the audience. You might actually be able to start pairing and co-sharing and co-teaching and co-coaching and becoming the Scrum Master essentially without having, or becoming the RTE in your case, without having that title yet. Because that is one of the things as an internal company, we sometimes we don't have money to go hire people. We're already at our budget, right? We have to work with what we have. But we also have people that are doing so many different things that they don't have time to do this. And we can't let this person leave completely and go do this other new role. Or, for example, we all know this because this is like a broken record. We can't afford to hire Scrum Masters for every single team. So every Scrum Master we have, you're going to have 5 teams. Good luck. Godspeed, and then everybody's stressing out because I have too many teams. I don't have enough time and all that stuff. But if you were to step up and say, hey, by the way, I'm actually a certified RTE, or I've been through a lot of training, I could help you with the next PI planning event. What can I do? People are going to be like, hey, where's that Karuna person? She was here last time and she was so helpful. And then it's going to create this drive to include you more, and they're going to hear your name. It's almost like a subliminal message that Karuna would be the next best RTE ever at this company. Karuna would be the best, that's the kind of stuff you kind of want to just, I know this is going to sound like Pollyanna, but just burst with this energy that people just can't help but feel it and turn around and say, oh yeah, you'd be a perfect candidate for this role. And even if you do that and it doesn't result in a full-time position as an RTE at your current company, guaranteed there's someone who's paying attention, who's listening, and sees your work and will have a friend or an old colleague that says, I'm looking for someone to fill this role. And they'll say, I know just the person who would be perfect for you for that role. I firmly believe that the reason why I have been successful in my career is that I want to help people and they want to help me. And so if I make it easy to work with people to work with me, and I try to help them, they will remember that. And sometimes it's not as easy as just filling out a resume or filling out an application. And I know that's hard. I have been lucky. And I think there's a lot of hard work that goes behind that word lucky. It's not really entirely luck, that I've had a lot of good people around me who believed in me and I believed in them, and we took care of each other even when we left the company. And that's so important for us to build that community. This goes back to another talk that I talk about leadership, love, and development, because I'm so passionate about that. But it helps to help other people. So start with the helping, and the help will come.
Definitely. I tried the mentee mentor programs as well. I'm trying to, showcase that I am willing and wanting to learn or shadow, as you've mentioned. I have set myself out there, but I haven't gotten any bait yet, but still going for it.
Yeah, good. Don't give up, because sometimes it takes a lot longer. Life is not on your timeline, unfortunately.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump in and suggest that. I became a Scrum Master at my current company, got hired on as a Scrum Master, and started being effective as a Scrum Master for the team that actually I was Scrum Master for 3 teams. Turned out that they were all working on the same code base, so I convinced the organization to let's merge them into one team, and then we can have more cross functionality. And after a few iterations, it became apparent that that was not a bad idea, and we did that. And then the next thing I knew, my supervisor was talking to me about RTE, and it occurs to me that had I been aware of RTE stuff before that all came about, I could have started to look for the value stream within the organization and see where that value stream is, and see which teams are involved in the value stream, and just sort of start, playing an RTE of sorts by pulling those Scrum Masters and those product owners together periodically to talk about how the teams are all touching upon one another and how there is a value stream there. So kind of creating the role. I mean, in my case, my supervisor was ahead of me. I didn't even really know what RTE was, but he's like, well, there are these 3 other teams involved in the work that you're doing, and I want you to become an RTE for them. That was really, I got very lucky. But I think that there's a way that, just using the skills that I learned by going and taking RTE training about value stream and seeing where that stream is and how the teams fit together and who the people are, then you can make the connections to get into that, potentially get into that role.
Yeah. And I was just looking at some of the chat. Some people are mentioning salary. I'm going to steer away from that, but I will tell you this. As a consultant working for another company like a C Prime, Icon, Accenture, they're taking a significant cut out of that the customer is paying them to pay you. So it's not always the best financial solution for you in the long term, but it is definitely a stepping stone to getting from a full-time position to potentially your own business or making more money. Because as you become more experienced within the program level and in portfolio level, those areas need some serious love and have for a very long time. And for the last 20 years, I would say so many people are focused on team, Scrum Master, Scrum Master, Scrum Master, and they're just starting to talk about program, but they're still talking about coaching teams of teams. That we're seeing there's a missing link or a gap that still hasn't been entirely filled yet for companies to think about more of the strategy and how does what the teams do week by week, sprint by sprint, relate all the way up to the larger true north, the rocks, the strategy planning that we're doing as a company, and how are we linking all of that to show not only are we solving our biggest problems within our own company, but are we solving customer problems? So it's to what I think Grant was talking about is how do we change the discussion over let's be agile and we're all Scrum Master to by doing that, what problems that we had are we solving? Because I think the outcomes piece is so much more important than just implementing Scrum or implementing SAFe. And that's one of the messages that I think really hits home for a lot more people if you start talking about agnostic tools and more about outcomes. Like what are the key areas of challenges you see within your org or in your team? Let's try to figure out what tools we can pull out of all these toolboxes that could help you solve those problems. And that's where I felt I made the biggest leap in my own career, is to switch the mindset of isolating framework and instead looking more at the outcomes of problem solving.
So Kristen,
Anyone else?
Is that
Yeah.
harder to do as a consultant? Because again, I would imagine that would be next to impossible, because like I've tried to go into like engineering manager jobs and they're like, you got to be almost an employee, because they don't want to hire a contractor as a engineering manager. They want you got skin in the game. So I would think as you get into strategy in the business, they really want you to be embedded in the company versus contractor.
Not for me. My whole career for the last, let's see, 2013, that is exactly what I did do. So they would bring us in to help them solve those bigger problems and help them build a strategy around it. So it has more to do with getting into the right level within the organization let me back up. As a Scrum Master consultant, my visibility influence and my whole job is to just fix the problems at the team level. And that's where I'm going to spend more of my attention, and they're not asking me to look at anything else. But when a company like the C-level suite would reach out to say like Rally or CA and say, we've got really big problems. We've got a quality problem. We also have a problem with predictability. We very rarely ever meet any date commitments. We're always over budget. We're like, yeah, you and everybody else. So what do we do to solve that? We go in there with the approach that, well, let's figure out what we need to improve within your process and possibly your tools and people and behavior to fix those things. But those are the only reasons why we're here, right? And sometimes we go in with that message and that question, and sometimes we have to wait until we've started making some progress to then say, okay, everybody, push your keyboards away, stand back, and let's talk about the strategy of this company. Where are we going as a business? And what are we noticing is going awry when it comes to executing on that? And that's usually where we find out that, and I've said this several times, so you probably heard me say this before if you know me well, I am shocked that these Fortune 500 companies are successful once I see underneath the hood of their cars, because there is so much chaos and so much just junk and waste as part of their process of coming up with all these great ideas that might actually be fantastic, but then by the time it gets to a Scrum team sprint, you're like, I don't even see that. Whatever that was has nothing to do with what we're doing on a daily basis. And if it is, we don't see the connection as team members. So we possibly have to fix that problem. So that's actually why I moved away from team level coaching into portfolio and program management, is because that was so broken that if we continue to use the old waterfall style of stage gates and exit criteria to manage things, instead of are we actually delivering the features and functions that we expected to deliver as part of their larger strategy, then we're kind of missing the boat. So it kind of depends, but most of my clients, both as an independent consultant as well as when I was working for CA and Rally, they brought us in specifically to help them with their strategy, because they didn't have the skill set to even derive a strategy. And that is where I make the shocking discovery, like, you what? You don't know how to do that? Okay, all right, well, we'll up our sleeves. Let's help you and figure it out. So it depends on where you're going, how you're brought in. If I'm brought in at the engineering level, I'm probably not going to be dealing with strategy, because those aren't the people that got the budget to bring me in the first place. So that's probably where the disparity could have been. Most of my clients, they're bringing me in at the C-level suite.
Kristen, this is Tomo.
Tomo,
Hi.
how are you?
You sound like you're talking about Charles Schwab. That's where I work. Sorry, it's so dark. Is it okay if I share my story real quick?
Sure.
Yeah, I was a Scrum Master for 5 years there, and I've been a transformation coach for the last 2.5 years. And I got that role on my third try. And exactly what Kristen talked about, I felt like my pond was too small at the team level, and I was seeing a lot of dysfunctions in the company. And I was really interested in the leadership side of things, and our leaders talk, right? But the things that I'm hearing indirectly, they were just not correlating. So I'm like, I want to be out there. So first 2 times I tried it, and the positions were available, and I got kicked out. I only received a small email from HR and saying sorry. And between the second time and third time, I was already co-hosting a community of practice at the Denver location. And that way I was getting to know a lot of people and influencing quite a few. Meanwhile, I reached out to the coaches they had at that time and I got to know them. So when I got my third try, they knew me. And even one of the guys that I didn't think he was a good coach, but he and I sat down for an interview. He said, I'm so glad that you applied for this position. And I didn't really have to talk to him. I already got a thumbs up. So that experience was really, really easy. And it's been great, even though I'm seeing a lot more dysfunction in the company, but it's been really engaging and having fun, still passionate about it. And there are so many things that we can do to make that company even better. But that's how I got to the place where I'm at.
Cool. Commitment, sticking with it.
Or stupid, too stupid.
I know
Tomo, we know you're not stupid.
Yeah, I'm not believing that for a second.
Nope.
You guys are all kind.
Yeah.
Christen,
Well,
I'd like
I
to
actually
share
wanted
too.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about how there's needing to kind of branch out beyond the team level, and yeah, sometimes it's really helpful to work up into the management group. But in my current situation, I work at DHI with a handful of other Scrum Masters. We've found that working from our team level, we're essentially doing secret safe, if you will. We're doing safe, but we're not calling it safe, and we're not really doing all of the safe. Yeah, we did a mini pretend PI planning, and it actually went well, right?
Yeah.
But it's really, the Scrum Masters are working really hard to try to figure out how do we show the value of that PI planning, of that regular cadence at a higher level, not just the team level. So we're kind of working at it from the bottom up, if you will, too. And working with our managers and leaders to say, hey, you know what? It would be really helpful if all of the teams were really well aware of the vision that you're trying to deliver. Then it would be really helpful for the teams too, to be able to demo the work that they're doing so that everybody knows how everything kind of fits together. So we're kind of doing it from the team level instead of from the management level. But, you work with the skills that you've got, right? And you work with the environment where you are. So.
Yeah. And I think it ties into a comment that I think I saw, but it scrolled a little too fast for me to read. I don't want to dismiss the fact that there are a lot of situations, companies, organizations, and culture that do allow Scrum Masters to go well beyond the team. But I hate to say this, it's rare. Too often, you will see either the company is too large, there's a lot of bureaucracy, or there's just too much work. And so the Scrum Masters do tend to stay very team levels focused, but that's probably more by design or situational than it is intentional. I'm not trying to say that as a Scrum Master, you only have a certain span of influence. To Susan's, story, you can do a lot more if people are open to it and your message is well received. And that was a tone problem for me personally when I first started as a Scrum Master. Is I and maybe you're hearing it now, and I'm still need to work on it. But sometimes the way I speak, people assume that I was being very directive and telling you exactly how you should do it, and there's no room for error. And yet what I was trying to convey was confidence that it could work, not that I was saying it's the only way. And so as I learned to sort of soften or change the language or the tone of how I would share things with people, more doors became open for me to move beyond just teams or beyond just a single train or a program or beyond, project management and into other areas of the business. But yes, absolutely. Depending on whether or not you have the influence, the connections, the ability, the bandwidth, the energy to go beyond team, definitely do that. And believe that it's possible. I don't want to dishearten anyone to say, stay in your own lane. I hate that phrase, by the way, unless I'm on the highway, and then I do actually want them to stay in their own lane because it's not fun. Other stories or questions about what to do after Scrum Master?
Hi, this is Sue again.
Yes.
Okay, we can ask 2 questions, right?
Oh,
Just
of
kidding.
course.
Okay, thanks. The PMP, the PMI, they recently changed their syllabus and they added Agile. So I'm just wondering how it's going to affect like the Scrum Master role, because the project managers would also know about the Agile, and
Yeah.
will that be a threat? Or I shouldn't say threat, but kind of, I don't know.
Well, I can speak from my own experience as well as everyone else can, and probably will here shortly. But I've started out as a PMP after getting certified in, I think it was 97 or 98. And I still actually have a valid certificate, which a lot of my friends are like, why do you keep paying them for nothing? You're not doing project management anymore, but it's part of my resume. The other thing I will say is this. Yes, PMI has created other tracks of education that are around agility, but my own network of people and my own experience, they all agree that that is for, please take this with a grain of salt. A lot of people who work in the government sector, they go that route when they want to go from project management, traditional waterfall to Agile, because the government pays for those certifications, and PMI is a valid, it's a vendor, it's an approved vendor within the system. So it's a lot easier to go through that body of knowledge to get an Agile certification than it is to try to get CSM through Scrum or Agile Alliance. I don't necessarily think that's 100% true, obviously, but there are some limitations to that. The other thing is there's a lot of personal animosity, yes, I said it, between PMI and everybody else in the Agile community. And they're all like, you are not welcome at my table. I am not one of those people. In fact, I would rather that we appreciate all the work and effort that went into creating the PMI, because it paved the way for us, people. I mean, this is how we got where we are at, is because they needed something different for businesses that could no longer do waterfall type of project management. So I've said from the very beginning, whenever I'm teaching different classes, PMI and project management and waterfall is not dead. Agile people should not be telling them that it's no longer valid. They should say there is another alternative if waterfall doesn't work for what you need it to do. Rather that message, because then it brings people to the same table and create a buffet instead of like, you can't be here and you've been here 2 hours, you go away. So I will say that there's some hiring managers who are also going to be a little averse, possibly, if you don't have an Agile or Scrum Alliance certification or a SAFe certification, but usually they're going to put that as a job requirement in the job ad, the requisition anyway. And so you would know. I personally have never pursued any Agile training through PMI because I thought the quality of the speakers, the trainers, and the content was better somewhere else. But that's just my own journey and my own approach to my own career growth. But definitely if someone else has done, I think it's the ACP, is it the right acronym for their Agile track?
Yes.
If someone's taken it and they like it, please speak up.
Actually, the PMP certification, they also have an Agile now, 50%. So
yeah, I will say that for the PMI, PMP, it has opened doors for me. It is a nationwide, worldwide recognized credential. And yes, there are certain companies that they don't want to talk to you unless you have a PMP and other titles. So what I would say, yes, is the PMP is good for what it applies. And I do use skills attained from my certification, but I also think that the trainings on Agile subjects are better in other organizations. So I would not run to get a certification in Agile from PMI. That doesn't mean they don't do other things well. I just don't think they do Agile as well as Scrum Alliance and others.
I'm seeing nods. Yeah.
There is there is a big presence of the project managers and the program directors at Schwab. And yeah, you said that it should be a threat. No, those folks are turning around, not turning around. They are following many of them are following the PMI principles to the T's. And because of the pressure that they're feeling and the having to deliver their projects, they are as if they're taking the shortcuts, not really emphasizing on the human aspects of it and influencing the people who are doing the actual work. So there is, at least for Schwab, there is a lot of room for Scrum Masters and coaches who really care about each individual.
Yeah, I would say, you know, the PMP, I would not have gotten this program manager position without my PMP behind my name, but it's been the 12 years of my Agile work that has gotten me the offer, the people that actually stand behind me and have recommended me for this promotion. It's because of my Agile experience, but they still wanted to see that as letters behind my name.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's an important thing for many people to hear, but also to help promote, is that we're not on opposite sides of the line here with project management, traditional waterfall folks, and the Agile community. We should be sitting at the table together, because there are a lot of companies who may be Agile at a team level, but they're not Agile anywhere else in the organization. And that's one of the next steps for a lot of companies, to have more business agility across all organizations. So if you have a background and you understand the traditional waterfall models, it's an advantage to you, because then whenever we have changes that we need to make outside of the teams, you have a sympathy for the struggle that it's going to be to convert what they're doing today to where you want to go. And you can incrementally build a plan where they can shift from project start and end dates with stage gates and percentage complete methods to manage progress into feature completion and things like that. But if you don't have that knowledge, that's probably one of the reasons why a lot of the companies, when they put out job descriptions, they do include PMP, because they know that a need for this candidate to understand the challenges we're facing today with waterfall and to empathize with that and help us move, versus coming in there slamming the Agile Bible on the table and saying, well, whatever you were doing is crap, moving to Agile. Because I think there's too many people in the Agile community who may not say those exact words, but that's what they sound like. And it's a big turnoff, and you don't make partnerships with people outside of the teams with that type of message. And I am not following the chat because there's so many conversations, which I love. Marie or Nancy, is there something that we should address that you saw?
I've been watching it. There is a lot of great stuff.
You know, that's one comment, I can't remember who made it, but they were talking about training. And like I've bounced into corporate training. I've done a lot of Agile training as we've done transitions. And honestly, if you have the skill set to put together a great program and tailor the message to your audience, I firmly believe it's a great way for people to recognize your expertise. Not only did I run lean coffees and best practices and COPs around my organization, but I was invited to department meetings to talk about how we were being successful in my world. And, you know, I became kind of that evangelist, but totally without any blessings from management. It was always, hey, can we invite Amanda? Do you guys mind if we have Amanda come in and do a meeting? It's amazing how, if you have that training mindset, it's so easy for you to talk about the methods and talk about the toolbox and pulling out whatever you need to solve for the current problem you're faced with.
Yeah. That's actually a really great pivot question for pivot topic that I neglected to mention. And that was, as part of my career growth, I became a certified trainer and actually did mostly training for several months in between some consulting gigs. And that actually generated not only connections and network, but job opportunities too. But I want to bring that up because there are some people who either because of feedback or it's self-realization, I love to teach or I love to do. So I don't want to be an instructor, but I love it when they come back from class and now they want to get going, right? They want to actually apply everything that they just did and have the reality checks of, well, we probably can't do a full PI like tomorrow because there's a lot of prep we have to do before we do that. So you might want to even ask yourself when you're looking at what is my next move from where I'm at now, whether it's Scrum Master or something to the next thing, is think about the execution that happens after training or the training itself, or the building of a transformational plan, because those are all very different ways to approach your career growth and what you might want to do next. And you might be surprised. Like I thought that I did not want to be on a different client site every week. But then whenever I actually had to stay with one client for more than 3 months, I'm like, get me out of here. I don't want to do this anymore because their problems are too big and I don't think I can solve them. And these people don't listen to me and oh my God, I want to go home. So there were some moments where you kind of have to try something for a little while to figure out, do I love it enough to stick with it, even when it's not perfect every day? And all it takes is a glass of wine and my girlfriend's and we'll be good to go for tomorrow morning. Or no, this would drive me into insanity if I had to do this another hour. That's another thing to think about. Like, ooh, I love training. Or maybe I just like to do stuff after they come back from training. Or maybe I build the training plan for them, somebody else to deliver. So there's a lot of different ways to think about what to do next. And training could be one of them.
Mm-hmm. Nancy.
And it's financially very lucrative.
You had a question like at 5:45, right? You talked about training and
oh yeah, it's funny. We're doing some training at Rally right now with our teams, and I've kind of discovered I don't like it.
Oh yeah.
Well, you said it exhausted you, and I guess
it's weird because in my other life outside of work, my other passion, I am an instructor, I'm a trainer, and I like that, but for some reason I don't like. We developed a little baby curriculum, and we've been presenting it to our teams, and it's draining. Yeah, I was really kind of surprised at how draining, and it was only half a day yesterday and today.
Yeah.
I was surprised it was so draining.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun. We had a great conversation and all that, but it just, I could not
see.
So
Nancy, is the other product, is the other thing that you have a passion for when you train that, is it draining for you or just this particular topic? Just nosy.
That's a good question. I do wonder if it's like the amount of time. So when we did the training classes yesterday and today, it was from 8:30 to noon.
Okay.
Right, both days. But when I do my training after work, it's just like for an hour at a time.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So with the 10 minutes or less that we have, I'm going to give you a technique to use. And it's something that you can use anywhere in your life. But I learned it from listening to a podcast probably 15 years ago, and I've used it ever since. And that is this. When you go into a situation, whether it's you're being invited to a party or you're invited to go and do an event or you're scheduled to do an event like Nancy's got to teach a class, there are 3 checkpoints for you to have. One is take a moment, sit back, let go of everything that's going on around you and just center yourself to understand, how am I feeling right now knowing I'm about to go do this thing? So before you even do it, check in with your physical and mental state of, am I loving this? Or am I feeling like I'm drained and I am hating this? Mm-hmm. Do the same check-in with yourself while you're doing whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. So maybe you're in the training moment and you have a 5-minute break. Actually take the 5-minute break, maybe go sit in the bathroom and hide in a stall and just check in with your body and your mind. Am I loving this? Am I feeling like it's rewarding? Or is it not what it was all chopped up to be? The third is to do it once you're done, but not immediately, like the second that you hang up the phone or when you walk out of the room. Wait about 10 to 15 minutes after the thing is over and check in mentally and physically with it again. Because sometimes the stress is just, I'm nervous. It's the stage fright. And so I didn't feel great about it whenever I was preparing for it. But once I did it, I felt great. And I felt great afterwards. Or another scenario was I felt like I was okay going into it, but I got up on stage and I was like, oh my God, I hope nobody sees the pit stains I'm creating, or that I'm stumbling over my words, or the people that are talking at me and asking all these questions, I just can't respond well, or I just really didn't like that at all. Yeah. And then, you know, afterwards, maybe you still feel the same way. So I think checking in before, during, and after for specific things that you're trying to figure out, do I want to keep doing these things, or I'm trying to figure out what it is about it. So the question that Vicki asked Nancy is, was the difference the content? I think that was the specific question. That could be a question that you ask yourself when you're doing your check-in. Yeah. The other thing is the length of time and the volume of people. And this actually comes from Marcus Buckingham, who wrote parts of the StrengthsFinder books, where he talks about how he was supposed to speak in front of a large audience. And over this course of this whole summer, while he was doing these speaking events, he realized he hated all of it. And he also didn't want to be invited to the mixers afterwards. He can't stand the small talk thing in social settings. And so he worked with his promoter and his business partner and said, well, could we limit the volume of people? Maybe go to 40 people at a time instead of 200 or 300 in a large audience. And he said it was a huge difference for me, because with 40 people, not only did I find myself less stressed before I would go on stage, but while I was talking to people, I could make eye contact with them. I could walk in front of someone. I could walk down an aisle, and I could get all the way to the back of the room in less than a couple of seconds. And I felt connected to my audience. And then afterwards, I felt like that was meaningful. But when he had to do the large, you know, big stadium kind of things, he said, I just knew that wasn't for me. And even if they asked me to go to a happy hour or a mixer afterwards, I didn't want to have anything to do with it because it just turned me off. So I remember when I watched that, it was while I was the evangelist at AOL doing a lot of large room conference style talks about agility. And I thought, okay, well, next time I'm going to do it, I'm going to check in before, check in during, and check in after. And I was like, hate it, hate it, hate it. Every answer was no. So I went back to my boss. Yeah. I went back to my boss and I said, well, instead of doing these large auditorium 400 or 500 people events, would it be okay if I just did like smaller 30, 40 people at a time? I'll do more of them to give more coverage to people, but they voluntarily signed up versus you making it mandatory during an all hands that I go up on stage and I talk about this stuff. And he was like, yeah, whatever. What do you think it's worth? Huge difference, not only for me, but also for the people who were in the room, because with 40 people, we could actually have discussions like this right now versus it's just the talking head for 45 minutes and then, okay, what did I just listen to? And I have so many questions and I don't know what to do with it next. So that's something I would offer to all of you. If you have a dilemma like Nancy, trying to figure out what's the right way to kind of form my career, try that technique. It's definitely helped me. Sounds like Vicki, you're kind of already on the same page. That's some things that you think about too.
Well, I have to learn it because I know one of our asks is to begin helping to coach. So in our area, so I'm just trying to understand some of the other experiences that people have had and start learning, as you mentioned earlier, from that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Marie, Nancy, thanks for having me, and thanks everybody else for participating. It was wonderful.
So appreciated. Oh my gosh, this is it exceeded my expectations. I think it's a great topic, but this has been really wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and fostering the conversations between the folks that joined here. This was really great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's wonderful, Christen.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And thank you everybody for joining us. It's been nice to have you from Denver on to Germany. Like we've got
that's so
range here. So that's really very, very cool too. So
go Agile Denver. Go Agile Denver.
Yeah, so thank you so much. We appreciate it.